Hi everyone, it's Margaret Manning here with Retire Different. Retire Different is the place for people who want to ask good questions in order to make the right decisions in order to have a fantastic retirement. And we've got so many questions that come up as we're moving into retirement, and I have two guests today who are going to help us discuss some of the topics that are most on your mind. My first guest is Pam Krueger. Pam is an investing and financial expert. She is an author and TV personality. She's the co-host of PBS Money Track and the creator of an online tool called Wealth Ramp, which connects fiduciary advisors with consumers like you. So hi, Pam.
Hi, Margaret.
Yes, I know. You're going to show me your mug. Hi, everybody. Pam and I have this ongoing thing about mugs.
It's the same tea inside the mug.
I love it. Well, and that's what we like here. Well, let's have a relaxed atmosphere in talking about money. It's always often very fearful and unsettling, but we're making it relaxed with our cup of tea. So my second guest, I'd like to welcome Joshua Escalante Troesh. Joshua is a tenured professor of business and a financial advisor. He is the owner of Purposeful Strategic Partners, which is an investment advisory firm, and he's a fee-only fiduciary advisor. He's one of Pam's Wealth Ramp fiduciary advisors. He is the founder of Purposeful Finance, which is a nonprofit financial education organization to help people with financial literacy. So welcome, Joshua.
Good morning, and I'm sorry I don't have a cup. I've probably got a can of soup somewhere, but that probably would be good.
I think you mentioned earlier that you have Santa. Is it a snowman or Santa mug, which is your son's favorite one?
My son's favorite, yes. Yeah, but it's at home, and I'm unfortunately at the classroom office. So.
Well, that's okay. We'll just visualize the snowman mug.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you both for being here. We've got a question today that comes up a lot in our conversations about retirement, and that is reverse mortgages. Now, people have a very emotional reaction to those two words. And Pam, could you start by just kind of setting the scene about what it is, and then how people have, mixed feelings about it?
Yes, absolutely, Margaret. So, there are so many people, tens of millions of Americans who are, 65, 70 years old. They're healthy. They expect to be able to continue to be healthy, and they need more cash flow in their retirement life to make their life, be able to sustain their lifestyle. And they own their home and it's paid for, and they're looking at their home and they're saying, I've been hearing these commercials and these infomercials about reverse mortgages, and I really want to stay in my home or my condominium. I don't want to leave. It sounds like such a magical solution to reverse the mortgage process and actually use my home as a source of income. All right, so that's the premise of it. And so it's very appealing on the surface. And these have changed over the last few years. But without a doubt, like everything else we talk about here, there's a good and there's a bad and there's an ugly. And you have to know how they work. Yeah. And that's why I'm so happy that Josh is joining us, because this is a really important topic for people.
Okay. So Josh, you deal with this in your business world and also with your students. Tell us what you think are some of the risks of reverse mortgages, and then we'll talk about the other side, but the risks first.
So as a general rule, anytime you hear a lot of bad things about something, there's always a lot of misinformation and a lot of truth to those bad things. And I am never a person that says I don't like a particular tool. So there's no such thing as something that I say is a bad product. What I don't like is generally the sales practices. And so when you hear a lot of negative information like you have about the reverse mortgages, that generally leads out of really predatory or misleading sales practices. Where the tool is not appropriate for what they're looking for, are sold on this thing, and then it kind of goes on this downward road. And so really when you hear these things, it's not necessarily that reverse mortgage is bad, it's that you should have your guard up. If someone is talking to you about it, realize that all this negative information is because there are sales practices that are consistently putting the wrong people in this particular product.
So the risks may be unexpected, but they may actually be just by explaining them and having some information made easier to make your decision as to whether it's good or not. But what sort of risks? Oh, Pam, go ahead. We'll come back.
I was going to ask Josh, maybe you can outline for us first we'll cover who is a candidate for a reverse mortgage, ideally for this, we call it a tool because that's sort of what it is. It's just like anything else we have that we can use at our disposal if it fits. Who is a candidate and ideally, and it fits for, and who it doesn't. Let's start with
That's
who
a
it
good way of
does.
looking at it. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to answer that in two ways. The first one is the requirements of what you have to have in order to have a reverse mortgage. And then we'll talk about some of the life events or things going on where it does make sense.
Okay.
Because ultimately, money doesn't really have a purpose unless it does something in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we look at this idea, what we're looking at with the reverse mortgage is, first off, the requirements. You have to be 62, and that is both people living in the house have to be at least 62. You have to have a lot of equity in the house. And you have to be able to financially keep up the house. So this is one of the big changes that has happened, and it's really dropped the default rates on reverse mortgages. Is they now have an assessment to determine, can you continue to maintain the property? Can you continue to pay the insurance and the taxes? Because a lot of defaults
For the homeowners association dues every month, that always goes up. It never goes down, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it goes up by surprising amounts because you get these big chunks because they haven't repaired the roof and so. Right. And so as we look at the idea of the reverse mortgage, that's the first step of it is, do you even qualify for it? But from both a, how old you are and how much equity do you have, and from a, do I have the financial capability, or is this just going to be a Band-Aid that's going to make things far worse later on?
Okay, excuse me, just one question, Joshua. Can you explain, because it's not just me that, I mean, I'm not the financial expert at all, but what is equity? What do you mean equity when you describe it in the context of do you have enough of it?
So from a very basic standpoint, think about the value of your house. So you go onto Zillow, you go onto Trillo, you go onto Redfin, and you look up, okay, what's the typical value of my house, or the estimated one? And then you subtract out all the mortgages associated with it. So this would be your first mortgage, your second mortgage, anything where your house is the equity, or the house is the capital you put up for the mortgage. You subtract those two numbers, and what you get is, if you sold the house, how much you would be left with, that's your equity.
A short answer is, how much of that house do you own versus the bank?
The mortgage, yeah. So if you paid your house,
Right. So you have to be, in order to be a candidate for a reverse mortgage, you're pretty much, common sense is you're not going to do this unless you own a significant portion of your house, even if the company, the provider of the reverse mortgage, will let you. You don't want to unless you really own, I would say, what do you think? I would say 85%.
Oh, easily. And as we look at this idea, realize that when you get advice from the person that sells the product, they do not care. Because they're approving you does not mean it's a good idea. What they care about is, can they make the money back regardless of what your lifestyle looks like and what it does to your lifestyle? And that's not to say that they're bad people. Just realize that that's not what they're making their decision on. And you need to be able to make your decision on not just, can I pay it back, or can I deal with this financially, but what does it do to my lifestyle as well?
Yeah. So Josh, if I'm looking at your client base and I'm saying, can you draw me a picture, a persona, a profile of someone in real world who you said, you know what, reverse mortgage is going to work for her or him? Describe who's that ideal candidate and why.
So I'm going to give you some life situations, and hopefully it'll help you to provide context to this idea of, we're trying to solve for what the lifestyle we want to create for the client, and then how a reverse mortgage might make sense for that. So let's say that you are retired, you own your house outright, and you've got a nice, good-sized house. Maybe it's a $500,000 house, and your only child has just got a great job in San Francisco. They're married, they're starting to have babies, and San Francisco is a long way from where you live. And so now your grandchildren will be growing up in San Francisco. And you would really like to be able to be much closer to them, right? But the problem is, to have even a downsized house in San Francisco, you're looking at $1 million. And that is a lot to take $500,000 out of your portfolio, if you even have that, and be able to afford a house in San Francisco. And so there is a reverse mortgage product called a reverse mortgage for purchase. And the idea is, you sell your house, you have $500,000 in cash from the sale of your house. You then go and buy this $1 million house, $500,000 on a reverse mortgage on that house in San Francisco, $500,000 on from your cash from your existing house, you're in the exact same situation because you're not making mortgage payments and you're able to live close to your family. And that would be an example of where you can use a reverse mortgage to accomplish a lifestyle goal, to be closer to your family, closer to your grandchildren, be able to be there for babysitting and all the other things that we want to do when we're grandparents, right?
That sounds like a lifestyle goal that is very aspirational, and that's a fantastic. You just painted me a great picture. I never thought of somebody like that. But I'm also thinking about the person who's alone, who lives in the condo and is on a limited fixed income. And they don't have $1 million. They only have what they have, and they need more money than what they're getting from their Social Security. And they're looking at their house and they're going,
I don't want to leave it, really. Yeah.
No, I don't want to leave it, but maybe it becomes a piggy bank.
Yeah. So here's where it's very important that we be careful not to be sold the lie that the reverse mortgage is effectively an annuity, because it's not. So a lot of times what you'll hear is they'll talk about the idea that, oh, you get your reverse mortgage and you can get an extra $1,000 a month, and that can go on forever. And that's not the case. The reverse mortgage has a 10-year period, meaning a period is from the calculations of your mortgage and a bunch of other calculations that you do, where that reverse mortgage will end. And what oftentimes happens is when people are looking at it from a lifestyle perspective, and this is one of those things where there's no fraud involved because everything is disclosed in 5-point font, 60 pages into the contract. But people are either because they want to believe it or because the sales rep wants them to believe it. They believe that, okay, I'm going to get $1,000 a month all the way until the day I die. And a reverse mortgage is not like that. It might be a 15-year reverse mortgage, which means in your 16th, 17th, 18th year, that income disappears. And it's not to say that that's a bad idea, but we have to realize that what we've done is we've burned through that money, and now we don't have that backup plan for the mortgage, which is doable, but we have to plan for that period after that 15th year. And unfortunately, what happens is that you don't see that a lot. What you see is people getting the reverse mortgages. So there's nothing wrong with that idea. We just want to realize that there is this endpoint to the reverse mortgage.
There's a cliff. There's a cliff.
Yeah.
So what happens when you die? Sorry, excuse me, Pam. What happens when you die with the house? Is the house then the property of the person or of the company you sold your mortgage?
Sort of. So this is the wonderful thing about reverse mortgages. So your reverse mortgage, you're not going to make any payments on it. All that interest, all the fees, and they're significant. The reverse mortgages are not cheap, especially compared to conventional mortgages. But all that's going to be added on to the loan, and it's going to sort of snowball up. And when you die, and we'll talk about this later, one of the many other ways that the reverse mortgage can become due, because it's not just when you die. But when you die, the house has to be, basically the reverse mortgage has to be settled. So either your heirs are going to have to come up with the money to pay that off, or the house will have to be sold. But the wonderful thing about the reverse mortgage is, let's say that the bank screwed up and you owe $2 million on a $100,000 house. Now, this would be a monumental screw up. You're never going to see this, right? But a reverse mortgage is a non-recourse loan. What that means is the only thing that the bank can take is that $100,000 house. So your heirs and the rest of your estate are not going to be impacted unless there's some other contractual arrangement that wraps something else into it.
Okay.
That's a nice advantage of a reverse mortgage. But again, the worry that I have for clients is not that they'll die, because at that point, who cares? You're not in the house anymore anyway. What I worry about is, do you outlive whatever money equity was in your house? And did you need that later on?
And now you have no other source. This harkens back to who it's right for and who it isn't, which when I think of reverse mortgages, that's the most important question. Am I a candidate or am I not? And, Josh, it seems to me that just like with so many investments and contracts and opportunities that come along from banks to borrow, it comes down to that old axiom, kind of like the people who benefit the most are the people who need it the least.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like a wealthy person's tool, because if you do try to depend on it as a person who's desperate, you can get really hurt a lot of different ways.
Now, I will tell you, there is one use that is definitely the people that need it the most. And it's honestly my favorite use of a reverse mortgage. And that is if you or your spouse are diagnosed with a terminal illness or have a long-term care need that you cannot afford. And the reason why that makes sense is because we know that this is end-of-life needs, right? We know that this is not something where you're going to need the money in 15 or 20 years because, unfortunately, you have a long-term care need, you have a terminal illness. And a reverse mortgage can make a lot of sense in those situations for people who would be really struggling to be able to figure out how to afford and make their spouse comfortable or themselves comfortable during this time. And being able to basically use that money. Can
you draw us a picture of how that works? Just give us a scenario.
Yeah. So one of the ways that it can work is you can use either you can do a lump sum up front, which they limit the amount you can have in the first year, and then it's drawn out over periods of time. Or there are reverse mortgages where they work just like a HELOC, where it's a line of credit. And so you might open up that HELOC or open up that reverse mortgage, and you use the money in order to pay for the long-term care needs, or in order to pay for the medical needs of a person, either with long-term care needs or terminal illnesses. And as the bills come in, those things are paid off by the reverse mortgage, and you don't owe any money until the house is sold. And of course, if you're by yourself, once that need is gone, unfortunately, you've left this earth, and so selling the house doesn't matter.
And your heirs, the only thing that matters then is that, your heirs are
yours?
going to inherit the house. And obviously, that's the best case scenario, because you don't want your children paying for your long-term care, toward the end of your life anyway. So you're using your house equity as the line of credit to cover that.
Yeah, but you could run out of money there. I mean, the mortgage only will give so much as in that line of credit. I mean, it's not like an endless line of credit. I mean, if your bills get very extreme, you're eventually going to run out, and then you'll have to then sell the property, and that could be an even more traumatic thing to do if you're facing a very serious illness with your husband or your wife. So I guess sorry, can I go back?
This is a good idea. Yeah. It's always, this is a tool and you need to plan for it. Because exactly like you say, if you don't plan for, well, what happens if this happens?
Right.
You could end up with just making it worse, and you just kick the can down the road.
Yeah. But I honestly feel very strongly that folks who are not wealthy and don't have enough money in the equity locked into their home to cover those expenses and so forth, they want to believe that it's going to solve their issues. But I worry about people who don't have a lot of money and a lot of equity seeing this as a Hail Mary. And then, just like Margaret said, it isn't. So to me, the tool works best for people who are pretty well off.
Yeah, so I guess getting back to the very first question that we started with about what are the unexpected risks of a reverse mortgage, I guess what we're talking about here is the unexpected risk is primarily, does it match the lifestyle and your equity in the house? Do you have the right idea about how the money is going to be accessible or be available to you, either through, like you say, like this line of credit, or there's so many different kinds, but also this idea that, you have in your mind, it is like an annuity, like it's going to be like for the rest of your life. And that is a definite risk of reverse mortgages, that you don't understand what you're going to get. So what do? They go to you. They go to a financial advisor, I guess. I mean, sounds like you've already listed 4 or 5 different kinds of reverse mortgages. Pam.
And Margaret, I go crazy here, because this is where it's so critically important that people understand, who the heck are you talking to about this? If you're talking to somebody who sells this and gets a commission for pushing it, you're not going to get unbiased advice like Josh is telling you. The downsides and the upsides, let's weigh them together. I'm on your side. You're not going to get that. That's why who you talk to, fee only, fiduciary, competent, experience, is so important.
Yeah. And one of the big things that is very important to understand, and you'll hear in the ads that, you can access the money in your house, and you can't be kicked out of your house until you die.
Right.
Or and they'll put a disclaimer at the very end and everything else, but the reality is,
unless you
some ways you can get kicked out of your house, right? Not making
unless you have a Chihuahua pet or a dog.
Yeah. And one of the ones that's surprising.
That's awful.
Yeah, one of the ones that's surprising is, and this is very common, especially amongst the generation that's retiring right now, and it's generally the husband, but one spouse handles all the finances. My guess is a lot of your readers, their husband is, or viewers, their husband is the person on the mortgage. And oftentimes it's the husband that will then sign for the reverse mortgage. And unfortunately, if a spouse is not a co-borrower on that reverse mortgage, when the husband dies, the wife, in this case, in this example, would have to go through an application process and request not to be kicked out of the house.
Unexpected risk.
Right.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And that's a big deal, especially for people who are in retirement now, because it's very, very common for the husband to be the one on the mortgage, the husband to be, just based on the age demographics and the way
so true.
title expectations were.
Okay, I think we've gone pretty far and deep on this topic of reverse mortgages. We are going to do another video with pulling it all together and asking some really specific questions about reverse mortgages. But I don't want to cut you off because I know you're both passionate about this subject. Pam, is there anything you want to say in closing?
It's just, again, to understand that the benefits are always being touted on these tools or these products, these kinds of arrangements and contracts. And just to understand that you can't buy the benefits. You have to understand the way it really works.
Right. And Josh, you're talking to your students here for 2 seconds, or a minute. What would you say to them about this? If they're teaching, you're learning about reverse mortgages, what's your advice?
So when I talk, and I have an unusual thing where I have students everywhere from 18 all the way up to 70, but we'll talk about the people that are in their 20s. And what I tell them is, you are oftentimes more educated, especially the ones taking my personal finance class. You're far more educated than your parents and your grandparents may be about finances. And that what you want to do is, I know you're not looking at a reverse mortgage because you're not 62, but your grandparents and your parents might be. And have open conversations and talk about these things. And I would encourage that for your viewers as well. Have open conversations with your children. Have open conversations with your grandchildren about money, the decisions you're making. I can't tell you how many times I've had people ask me, how can we unravel this reverse mortgage that my parents took out? Because they didn't want to burden us with the financial issues that they're having, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't talk to us about it, but then they got into this reverse mortgage, and we really want this house because this is the house that we grew up in as kids, and we want it as vacation. And
you're emotionally attached.
Yes, and unfortunately, because there's not good communication, it's the children said, we could very easily have given you extra $1,000 a month. That's nothing to us. But now they're trying to unravel this reverse mortgage because of the fact that they didn't have that open.
Right. Well, look, there's plenty of great resources here. And this is where Pam comes into this picture, because she spends her life basically finding people like Joshua, finding fiduciary advisors who are going to be unbiased and able to really help you, not just answer the questions, but get out of you the emotion that will facilitate that conversation. Because I mean, Pam, we've talked to many different people that you've introduced me to, and the one quality is what Joshua displays, which is humanity. You talk about the human side of talking to your children about finances and, being real. So Pam's website is wealthramp.com. Check it out. If you're looking to be matched up with a fiduciary advisor, great place to go. And Joshua, I'm sorry, but I didn't ask you what your website is. How do people find you?
It's purposefulsp.com. So purposeful, and then the letters for strategic partners.
Okay. .com. Okay. And if you've got questions, you know where to leave them below, and we'll do this topic over and over until we get all the answers that you have, all the questions that you have answered. So thanks again, Pam. Thank you, Joshua, very much.
Thank you, Margaret. I'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Retire Different YouTube channel and check out our website at retiredifferent.com. We are a community of people who are asking questions and trying to make good financial decisions so that we can have an amazing retirement. We'll be looking at our relationship to money and also places that we can go for support, advice, and inspiration.